The room was white, sterile white, hospital white. The kind of white that erases color from the world and makes everything feel like the end. Rosemary Clooney lay on a narrow bed in the psychiatric ward of Mount Sinai Hospital. Her wrists were strapped down, not tightly, just enough to keep her from hurting herself. The leather restraints were soft, padded, but they were still restraints. She stared at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights hummed above her. Somewhere down the hall, someone was screaming, then silence, then the sound of footsteps. Nurses, doctors, people who spoke in low voices and looked at her with careful eyes. The window to her left showed a slice of Los Angeles, blue sky, palm trees, the world continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. For Rosemary, the world had ended 10 days ago. She couldn't remember how she got here, couldn't remember the ambulance ride, couldn't remember much of anything after Reno. Just fragments, pieces of memory that didn't fit together. A stage, lights, words that wouldn't come, then darkness. Rosemary Clooney, America's sweetheart. The girl with the voice like honey. The woman who sang White Christmas with Bing Crosby. The star who'd sold millions of records and filled concert halls from New York to Los Angeles. Now she was here, strapped to a bed, sedated, broken. A nurse came in, young, kind face. She checked Rosemary's pulse, adjusted the IV drip, wrote something on a clipboard. She didn't make eye contact. Most of them didn't. They looked at the machines, the charts, anywhere but at Rosemary's face. It was June 1968. 10 days earlier, Robert Kennedy had been shot in a Los Angeles hotel kitchen. Rosemary had been there. Not in the kitchen, but in the hotel. At the celebration. She'd sung for Bobby's campaign, believed in him, loved what he represented. She'd watched the chaos unfold, the screaming, the blood, the frantic attempts to save him. And something inside her had snapped. Not immediately. Not that night. It took a few days, but the fracture was there, spreading like cracks in glass, and by the time Rosemary noticed, it was too late. The glass had shattered completely. To understand what happened to Rosemary Clooney in June 1968, you need to understand who she was before the breakdown, before the restraints, before the white room. You need to understand the long road that led to this moment. Rosemary Clooney was born on May 23, 1928, in Maysville, Kentucky, a small town on the Ohio River. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where poverty wasn't shameful, it was just life. Her family was poor. Her father Andrew painted houses when he could find work. Her mother Frances took in laundry. There were 3 children. Rosemary was the oldest, then her brother Nick, then her sister Betty. The house was small, 2 bedrooms, no indoor plumbing. In winter they heated it with a coal stove that never quite kept the cold out. Rosemary would wake up and see her breath in the air, pull the blankets tight and wish for summer. But the real cold wasn't from the weather, it was from her father's drinking. Andrew Clooney was a functional alcoholic, meaning he could hold a job, pay some bills, but the drinking was always there, a presence in the house, a tension that never quite went away. When Rosemary was 13, her mother left, just packed a bag one morning and walked out. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. Frances Clooney couldn't take it anymore. The poverty, the drinking, the endless struggle, so she left her 3 children with their father and disappeared. Rosemary became the mother. At 13, she cooked, cleaned, made sure Nick and Betty got to school, made sure there was food on the table, made sure they survived. Her father tried. He really did, but he was drowning in his own problems. The drinking got worse. The work became more sporadic. Money was always tight. But Rosemary could sing, really sing. She'd always had the voice. Even as a little girl, church choir, school plays, anywhere she could perform. And people noticed. That voice, that tone, the way she could make a song feel like it was written just for you. When Rosemary was 16, she and Betty auditioned for a local band. They got hired, $25 a week, split between them. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was hope. For the next few years, Rosemary and Betty traveled with the band. Small towns, dance halls, county fairs. They sang standards, popular songs, whatever people wanted to hear, and slowly, Rosemary's reputation grew. By 1949, Rosemary was 21 and recording for Columbia Records. Her first few singles did okay, but nothing special. Then, in 1951, she recorded Come On to My House, a novelty song. Rosemary hated it, thought it was silly, but the record label insisted. The song went to #1, sold over 1 million copies, and suddenly, Rosemary Clooney was a star. The offers poured in, more recordings, television appearances, concert tours, and then, in 1952, Hollywood called. Paramount Pictures wanted her for a movie. By 1954, Rosemary was one of the biggest stars in America. Her records sold millions, her concerts sold out. She was beautiful, talented, beloved, and she was being offered the role of a lifetime. White Christmas, a Paramount Pictures production, starring Bing Crosby, the biggest star in the world, a legend, an icon, and they wanted Rosemary to be his co-star. Rosemary was terrified. She'd met Bing once before, briefly, at a recording studio. He'd been polite, professional, but distant. She didn't know if he even remembered her. The first day on set, Rosemary arrived early. She was wearing her costume, a beautiful dress, hair and makeup perfect, but her hands were shaking. Bing walked onto the set, saw Rosemary standing there, walked right up to her, and extended his hand. "Rosie, right? I'm Bing. We're going to have fun with this." He said it so casually, like they were old friends, like she wasn't a nobody from Kentucky who'd gotten lucky with a novelty song, like she belonged there. They started rehearsing. Bing was patient, kind. When Rosemary made mistakes, he'd joke about it, make her laugh, take the pressure off. He treated her like an equal, not like a legend humoring a newcomer, like a partner. During breaks, they'd talk about music, about growing up poor, about the strange luck that had brought them both to Hollywood. Bing had grown up in Tacoma, Washington. His father worked in a warehouse. His mother took in boarders. He understood what it meant to start with nothing. One afternoon, they were sitting in the studio commissary, eating lunch. Bing looked at Rosemary and said something she'd never forget. "Rosie, don't let this business eat you alive. It will if you let it. Keep something for yourself, something they can't touch, something real." Rosemary asked what he meant. Bing thought about it. "Fame is borrowed. It doesn't belong to you. One day you'll wake up and it'll be gone, and if that's all you had, you'll have nothing. So keep something else. Family, friends, yourself, something that's yours even when the applause stops." Rosemary nodded. She didn't fully understand then. She was too young, too new to the business, but she remembered the words. White Christmas was released in October 9th. They weren't calling each other every week, but they'd run into each other at industry events, send Christmas cards, occasionally have lunch. There was a bond there, a friendship built on mutual respect and shared understanding. By 1958, Rosemary had married José Ferrer, an actor, older than her, talented, complicated. They had 5 children together in 7 years: Miguel, Maria, Gabrielle, Monsita, Rafael. The marriage was difficult from the start. José was controlling, jealous, unfaithful, but Rosemary stayed. She'd grown up in a broken home. She was determined not to do that to her children. But staying came at a cost. Rosemary's mental health began to suffer. She started having panic attacks, anxiety, depression. She saw doctors, took pills, tried to manage it, but the pressure kept building. Her career was changing too. By the early 1960s, the music industry was shifting. Rock and roll was taking over. Elvis, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the big band sound was fading. Singers like Rosemary were being pushed aside, called old-fashioned, outdated. She was only in her 30s, but she was being treated like a relic from another era. The concert bookings got smaller. The record sales dropped. The phone rang less often. By 1965, Rosemary was struggling financially. She had 5 children to support, a husband who spent money faster than she could make it, and a career that was slowly dying. In 1967, Rosemary and José finally divorced. It was messy, bitter, but necessary. Rosemary got custody of the children. José got visitation, and Rosemary got the bills. All of them. She moved into a smaller apartment, cut expenses, worked every gig she could find. Small clubs, Lounges, corporate events, anything to keep money coming in, anything to feed her children. But she was exhausted. Emotionally, physically, financially. She was 39 years old and felt like she'd lived 3 lifetimes. And then she found something that gave her purpose. Politics, social justice, the civil rights movement, opposition to the Vietnam War. Rosemary had always cared about these issues, but now she had time, energy, a platform. In 1968, Robert Kennedy announced his candidacy for president. Rosemary believed in him, believed he could change things, end the war, heal the country's racial wounds, bring hope back to America. She volunteered for his campaign, sang at rallies, raised money, traveled with the campaign team. It gave her something beyond her own struggles, something bigger, something that mattered. On June 4, 1968, Bobby Kennedy won the California Democratic primary. It was a huge victory. He was on track for the nomination, maybe the presidency. The campaign celebrated at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. Rosemary was there. She'd sung earlier that evening. The crowd had been electric, full of hope, full of belief that change was possible. Around midnight, Bobby gave his victory speech in the embassy ballroom. Rosemary watched from the side. She was exhausted but happy. This was what hope felt like. Bobby finished his speech, waved to the crowd, then turned to leave through the kitchen. It was a shortcut to the press room. The staff had cleared a path. Rosemary was still in the ballroom when she heard the commotion. Screaming, shouting, people running toward the kitchen. She didn't know what was happening, but she felt it. The shift, the wrongness. Someone grabbed her arm. "Rosemary, we need to leave. Now." What happened? Bobby's been shot. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Bobby had just been on stage, smiling, waving. How could he be shot? Security rushed her out of the hotel. She got into a car. Someone drove her home. She sat in the back seat, staring out the window, trying to process what had just happened. Bobby Kennedy died the next day. June 5, 1968, 26 hours after being shot. He was 42 years old. Rosemary sat in her apartment and watched the news coverage, over and over, the same footage, the same words, the same impossible reality. Bobby Kennedy was dead. Hope was dead. Her children were worried. Rosemary wasn't talking, wasn't eating, just sitting, staring at the television. They tried to comfort her, tried to get her to rest, but she couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't feel anything except a vast, empty numbness. On June 8, 3 days after the shooting, Rosemary had a performance scheduled in Reno, Nevada. A casino lounge, 2 shows a night, $3,000 for the weekend. Money she desperately needed. Her manager called. "Rosie, you don't have to do this. We can cancel. Tell them what happened. They'll understand." But Rosemary said no. She needed to work, needed the distraction, needed to do something normal, something that made sense. She flew to Reno, checked into her hotel, got dressed for the show. The casino sent flowers to her room. A card. "So sorry for your loss. Looking forward to the show." Rosemary looked at herself in the mirror. Full makeup, hair perfect, dress beautiful. She looked like Rosemary Clooney, but she didn't feel like her. Felt like someone else, someone pretending. At 9 p.m., she walked onto the stage. The band started playing. The lights were bright. The audience applauded. Rosemary stood at the microphone. She opened her mouth to sing. Nothing came out. She tried again. The first line of the song. She'd sung it 1,000 times, but the words weren't there. They were gone, erased from her memory. The band kept playing. The audience waited. Rosemary stood frozen. Then something broke inside her. She started laughing. Hysterical, uncontrollable laughing. Couldn't stop. Her body shook with it. Tears streamed down her face. The audience thought it was part of the act at first. A joke. But then they realized, this wasn't funny. This was something else. Something wrong. Rosemary's manager rushed onto the stage, put his arm around her, guided her off. The curtain closed. The band stopped playing. The audience sat in confused silence. Backstage, Rosemary couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. Her heart was racing. She felt like she was dying. Like the world was ending. Her manager called a doctor. The doctor came to the hotel, examined Rosemary, gave her a sedative, told her she needed to go to a hospital. This wasn't exhaustion. This was a breakdown. An ambulance came. Rosemary was taken to a psychiatric hospital in Reno. They stabilized her, sedated her, but she needed more intensive care. Her family decided to transfer her to Mount Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. Better doctors, better facilities, closer to home. That's how Rosemary ended up in the White Room, strapped to a bed, sedated, lost. The first week she barely remembered. The medications kept her in a fog. She'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, sleep again, wake up. The cycle repeated. The doctors came and went, asked questions, took notes, adjusted medications. They were kind but clinical, professional. They'd seen this before. Psychotic break triggered by severe trauma, standard treatment, time, rest, medication, but there was nothing standard about how it felt. Rosemary felt like she'd been erased, like the person she'd been was gone, and she didn't know if she'd ever get her back. Her children visited. Briefly, the doctors said too much stimulation wasn't good, so they came in pairs, sat by her bed, held her hand, told her they loved her, that she'd be okay. But Rosemary could see the fear in their eyes. They were scared. Their mother, who'd always been strong, who'd held everything together, was broken, and they didn't know how to fix her. The press found out. Within days, headlines appeared in newspapers across the country. Rosemary Clooney hospitalized. Singer suffers breakdown. Rosemary Clooney's mental collapse. Some papers were sympathetic. Others were cruel. But the message was the same. Rosemary Clooney had lost her mind. Her career was over. She was finished. In 1968, mental illness carried a deep stigma. People didn't talk about therapy, or medication, or psychiatric care openly. If you went to a mental hospital, you were weak, broken, crazy, done. Concert promoters canceled bookings. Record labels stopped calling. The opportunities that had already been scarce disappeared completely. The phone went silent. Rosemary's sister Betty tried to manage things, paid bills, talked to doctors, dealt with the press, but she felt helpless. She didn't know how to fix this, didn't know if it could be fixed. For 3 weeks, Rosemary lay in that white room, sedated most of the time. When she was awake, the world didn't make sense. Everything was fractured, disconnected. She couldn't tell what was real and what was nightmare. The bills were piling up. The hospital, the doctors, the medications, over $6,000 a week. Rosemary had some savings, but not enough, not nearly enough. At this rate, she'd be bankrupt in a month. Her family tried not to think about it, focused on getting Rosemary better. But the financial reality was crushing. And then, on July 2nd, 1968, the phone at the nurse's station rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Quiet, most patients were resting. One of the nurses answered. A man's voice, calm, polite, professional. Good afternoon. My name is Bing Crosby. I'm calling about Rosemary Clooney. I'd like to speak with someone regarding her care. The nurse nearly dropped the phone. The nurse nearly dropped the phone. Bing Crosby. The Bing Crosby. Calling about Rosemary Clooney. Mr. Crosby. Yes, of course. Let me transfer you to Dr. Kellerman. He's Miss Clooney's primary psychiatrist. The call was transferred. Dr. Harold Kellerman picked up. He was a veteran psychiatrist, 58 years old. He'd treated hundreds of patients, but he'd never received a call from Bing Crosby. Dr. Kellerman speaking. Doctor, this is Bing Crosby. I'm calling about Rosemary Clooney. She's a dear friend. I just heard about her situation and I'd like to know how she's doing. Dr. Kellerman was professional, careful. Mr. Crosby, I appreciate your concern, but I can't discuss patient details without authorization. I understand, but I'm not asking for details. Just want to know if she's getting the care she needs, and if there's anything I can do to help. There was something in Bing's voice, genuine concern, not celebrity curiosity, real worry for a friend. Dr. Kellerman made a decision. She's stable, the medications are working, but recovery will take time, months probably, and the treatment is expensive. How expensive? Very. Bing was quiet for a moment. Doctor, I'd like to cover her medical expenses. All of them. Hospital bills, medications, follow-up care, whatever she needs. Dr. Kellerman wasn't easily surprised, but this surprised him. Mr. Crosby, that's extremely generous, but we're talking about substantial costs. I don't care about the cost. Just want to make sure Rosie gets better. Can you arrange that? I'll need to speak with her family first. Get their consent, of course. But doctor, one more thing. I'd prefer this remain private. No press, no publicity, just between us. Dr. Kellerman understood. I'll be discreet. After hanging up, Dr. Kellerman sat at his desk for a long moment. Then he called Rosemary's sister, Betty. Betty Clooney was at home in Los Angeles, exhausted, worried. The phone rang and she almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Clooney, this is Dr. Kellerman from Mount Sinai. I have some unusual news. I just received a call from Bing Crosby. Betty's heart stopped. Bing Crosby, are you sure? Very sure. He wants to cover all of Rosemary's medical expenses. Everything. He insists on remaining anonymous. Doesn't want publicity. Betty started crying. She couldn't help it. The financial pressure had been crushing her. She'd been losing sleep over how to pay for Rosemary's care. And now this impossible gift. Doctor, that's too much. We can't accept that. With respect, Miss Clooney, you can't afford not to accept it. Your sister needs treatment. This allows her to get it without financial stress. That matters for her recovery. Betty knew he was right, but it felt wrong. Taking that much money from someone, even from Bing Crosby. Can I at least thank him? Call him, something? He gave me a callback number. But he was clear. He doesn't want thanks. Just wants Rosemary to get better. Betty called the number. A secretary answered. Mr. Crosby's office. This is Betty Clooney, Rosemary Clooney's sister. I need to speak with Mr. Crosby. A pause. Then Bing's voice. That unmistakable voice. Warm, calm. Betty, I know why you're calling. And the answer is no. I don't want thanks. Just focus on getting Rosie better. Bing, this is too much. We can't accept this kind of help. Yes, you can. And you will. Rosie's family. And you don't let family drown. Betty was crying again. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just take care of your sister. I'll handle the rest. He hung up before Betty could respond. The next day, Bing called the hospital administrator. The conversation was brief, professional. He arranged payment for all of Rosemary's medical expenses, past bills, future care, everything. The hospital was instructed to bill him directly, and to keep it confidential. That same day, Bing did something else. He wrote a letter. Short, simple, the way Bing always wrote. Rosie, heard you're having a rough time. Been there myself. Different reasons, but I understand. Take your time. Get better. The world can wait. Your friend Bing. He mailed it to the hospital. Addressed to Rosemary Clooney. Patient care of Mount Sinai Psychiatric Ward. On July 5th, a nurse brought the letter to Rosemary during morning rounds. Rosemary was more lucid that day. The medications were stabilizing. The fog was lifting slightly. She looked at the envelope, recognized the handwriting immediately. Her hands shook as she opened it. She read the letter 3 times. Then she pressed it against her chest and cried. Not the hysterical crying from before. Quiet tears, relief tears. Someone cared. Someone understood. She wasn't alone. Over the next few weeks, more letters came. Every week. Sometimes twice a week. Never long. Just a few lines. Updates about Bing's life. Golf scores. Weather complaints. Gentle encouragement. Rosie played golf yesterday. Shot a 92. Terrible. Getting old. But at least I'm getting old. That's something. You're going to get through this. I know you will. Bing. Rosemary started writing back. Short notes at first. Thank you. I'm trying. It's hard. Then longer ones. Telling Bing about her fears, her doubts, her worry that she'd never perform again. Bing always wrote back. Never with empty platitudes, just honest words. Sometimes he'd share his own struggles. Times he'd felt lost. Times he'd wanted to quit. Rosie, I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning. Lost my first wife. Raised 4 sons mostly alone. Made mistakes I couldn't fix. But you keep going. Not because it's easy. Because it's the only choice that makes sense. You're stronger than you think. Bing. By mid-August, Rosemary was well enough to leave Mount Sinai. 6 weeks of intensive treatment. The doctors said she could continue outpatient care. Therapy 3 times a week. Medication. Regular check-ins. But she could go home. The day before discharge, Betty sat down with Rosemary. They needed to discuss the bills. Betty had been dreading this conversation. Rosie, we need to talk about the hospital costs. Rosemary nodded. She'd been dreading this too. How bad is it? Betty took her hand. It's taken care of. Bing paid for everything. Rosemary stared at her sister. What? No. That's impossible. That's too much money. Over $180,000. He paid every penny. And he doesn't want to be thanked. He said your family. Rosemary couldn't speak, couldn't process it. Bing Crosby had saved her, financially, emotionally, completely. She tried calling him, but Bing wouldn't take the call. His secretary politely explained that Mr. Crosby was glad Rosemary was feeling better and wished her well. Rosemary went home. Her children were waiting. They hugged her carefully. She assured them she was okay. Getting better. It would take time, but she'd be okay. The next few years were difficult. Rosemary continued therapy, stayed on medication, slowly rebuilt her life. But her career was gone. Nobody wanted to hire a singer who'd had a public breakdown. By 1970, Rosemary was nearly broke again. The savings were gone. Bills kept coming. She was thinking about quitting the business entirely. Then Bing called. "Rosie, it's Bing. I'm doing a Christmas special for NBC. I want you on it. Sing a few songs with me, like old times." Rosemary was terrified. "Bing, I haven't performed in 2 years. People remember what happened." "That's nonsense. You're a great singer. Let me remind them." The taping was scheduled for November 1970. Rosemary was a wreck for weeks. But when the cameras rolled, Bing was right there, next to her, making her feel safe. They sang White Christmas together, just like 16 years earlier. The studio audience gave them a standing ovation. The special aired in December. The response was overwhelmingly positive. The phone started ringing again. Small clubs, lounge acts, a start. In 1976, Bing invited Rosemary to another television special. The ratings were strong. Rosemary's bookings increased. She was almost back. Then, on October 14, 1977, Bing Crosby died. Heart attack on a golf course in Spain. He was 74. Rosemary was devastated. She flew to the funeral, stood in the back, cried through the entire service. After the funeral, she tried to tell Bing's widow what he'd done, but Catherine didn't know. Bing had never told her about the hospital bills, the letters, any of it. For 10 years, Rosemary kept quiet. She honored Bing's privacy, his desire not to be thanked publicly, but it ate at her. The world needed to know who Bing really was. In 1988, during an interview, a journalist asked about her 1968 breakdown, how she'd afforded treatment. Rosemary made a decision. Bing Crosby paid for everything, every penny, and he never told anyone, never asked for recognition, just quietly made sure I got the help I needed. The story spread. People were amazed, moved. Suddenly they saw Bing Crosby differently. Not just as a performer, but as a man who quietly helped people. Rosemary continued performing into her 70s. Carnegie Hall, new albums, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. She lived until 2000, died at 74. The same age Bing had been. In her final interviews, journalists always asked about Bing, and Rosemary always said the same thing. "Bing taught me that real kindness doesn't need an audience. Real friendship doesn't keep score. When I was at my lowest, when everyone else had given up on me, Bing showed up. Not with fanfare, not with publicity, just with quiet, steady support." That's the man he was. The story of Bing and Rosemary isn't just about mental health or Hollywood friendships. It's about what it means to be there for someone when they're drowning. Not for credit, not for recognition, just because it's the right thing to do. In 1968, when Rosemary Clooney was strapped to a hospital bed, her career destroyed, her life in pieces, Bing Crosby paid $180,000, wrote letters every week, gave her hope, and when she was ready, gave her a second chance. He did it so quietly that even his own wife didn't know. 10 years later, when Bing died, Rosemary realized the full weight of what he'd done. He'd saved her life, and he'd never wanted anyone to know. That's the kind of person Bing Crosby was. Not perfect. He had flaws, failures, regrets. But when someone he cared about needed help, he showed up. No questions asked, no strings attached. Maybe that's the real legacy. Not the songs or movies or awards, but the lives he touched when nobody was watching. The people he helped when cameras weren't rolling. The quiet acts of kindness that changed everything. Rosemary Clooney spent 40 years trying to repay Bing for what he did, but Bing never wanted repayment. He just wanted her to be okay. And in the end, she was. But here's the question that's been bothering me since I learned this story, and I need your thoughts on it. Bing kept this secret for almost 10 years. He never told anyone. Not his wife, not his friends, not the press. He did one of the most generous things imaginable and took it to his grave. Rosemary honored that silence for another 10 years after he died. 20 years total before the world knew. Was that the right choice? I keep thinking about this. On one hand, Bing's humility was incredible. He didn't help Rosemary for recognition. He helped because she needed help. And keeping it private meant it stayed pure. No ulterior motives, no publicity angle, just genuine kindness. But on the other hand, the world needed to know this story. In 1968, mental illness was deeply stigmatized. Rosemary's career was destroyed because she had a breakdown. If people had known that Bing Crosby, the biggest star in the world, was supporting her, would that have changed things? Would it have reduced the stigma? Would other people who were suffering have felt less alone? And here's the harder question. Rosemary waited 10 years after Bing died to tell the story. 10 years during which people only knew Bing as a performer, as a legend, but not as the man who quietly saved his friend's life. Should she have told the story sooner? Did we lose something by not knowing this while Bing was still alive? Could this story have helped other people who were drowning if it had been public in 1968 instead of 1988? Part of me thinks Bing was right. That real kindness doesn't need an audience. That doing good without seeking credit is the purest form of generosity. But another part of me thinks that in a world that desperately needs examples of genuine compassion, keeping these stories secret might be a waste. That maybe we owe it to each other to share the moments when someone did something truly good, not for their benefit, but for ours, to remind us what humanity looks like. So I'm asking you, in the comments below, was Bing right to keep this secret? Was Rosemary right to wait 10 years to tell it? Or should stories like this be shared immediately, even if the person who did the good deed doesn't want recognition? And here's the personal question. If you did something incredibly generous for someone, something that cost you significantly, would you want it kept secret? Or would you want people to know? Not for ego, but because maybe your story could inspire someone else to help someone else. I'm genuinely curious what you think. Because I go back and forth on this, there's no clear answer. But I think the question matters. Leave a comment. Tell me where you stand. Let's talk about this. Because in a world that feels increasingly cynical, stories like this matter. Whether they're public or private, whether they're told immediately or years later, they matter. And maybe by talking about it we can figure out together how to be better, how to help more, how to be the person who shows up when someone is drowning. What do you think?